Welcome to the Boardroom. I'm your host, Ntlalontle Ngcakaza, and today we are talking women empowerment with Michelle David. She's the director and chair at Norton Fulbright. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, good program you have here with the Women in Leadership Summit. Tell us more, what was the vision behind this summit?
So every year, Norton Rose is behind any women empowerment issues, but every year we make an intentional effort to be part of the DLO event. What we look at is the disenfranchised sort of environments, and of course energy is one such environment. And what we look to is to bring together women, so it's a melting pot of women, an ability to talk about issues that women face. And I think I would like to say find solutions, but it's a problem where you can't find solutions overnight. So it's just an ability for women to understand that you're not alone, there are others who are going through the same things, but also to highlight the things that we are doing correctly, the things that we are achieving. And then I think the main takeaways is that we've got to, there's a lot more to be done in this space. And so for big business, importantly, it's an opportune time to look at the feedback that you get and to seek to implement that feedback to make your diversity more holistic, to actually be intentional about that diversity.
Yeah. Where do you find that maybe organizations hit the wall and the progress is not as quick as it would desirably be? What happens? Because when you go to many events, they talk about this women empowerment, but there seems also not to be a satisfying progress being made.
So I think where the problem comes in is if diversity or gender empowerment is a target. Once it becomes a target and you've got to put in place business cases and so on, that's where the difficulty comes in. But if you're intentional about it and you actually live it, so it's part of your performance indicators, it's part of your KPIs, it waterfalls in throughout your business, then you're going to be successful at it. And I think the businesses that fall apart is actually where you're not passing on skills, you're not actually empowering women. So that's the difficult one. And what you find, especially in our space, for example, is we have to be very intentional about growing women. It's not just about hiring women, it's about having women in leadership. It's about empowering women to take the next step, to have the ability to run big business. So if you as a woman are not accountable for your own sort of profit centers, your own budgets, the rest of it, then unfortunately you're not going to be as empowered as you should be. And so what we try to do is ensure that women have not just the opportunity, but have the space to actually grow and shine. And that is where you'll have women staying. So what we find is if you want to have sustainable diversity, you've got to be very intentional about that sustainability.
Yes. And as director and chair, what is leadership to you?
Leadership to me is a number of things, but the main thing for me is that I've got to have people who are happy to come to work, people who are invested in the business, and you've got to be a leader who leads. So not someone who sits behind and expects people to do things. You've got to actually show people what you want from them. And so being a leader means taking a business forward, but not just on its own. You've got to take your people with you. And that's very important for me. So it's having the sustainability of the people invested in me to make sure that we cross the line together. And that's a very important factor for me.
Just to take us through your journey there, Chair. How did it start out for you, and what has been maybe those key ethics, if you like, and those key areas you focused on in your career to allow you to grow and to achieve some of the things you have achieved in your corporate career?
So I'm very fortunate in that I'm of course a lawyer, and I'm very fortunate to still be practicing. So I am a practicing lawyer. I can't say that I ever set out to be the chair of anything. What I have always been is a little bit clear in my thoughts, clear in my views, and I've always been one who holds true to that. So I've never been quiet about the things that are important to me, and I think that has started the path to leadership. So where I've seen something that hasn't sat well with me from a moral or ethical perspective, I've stood up about it. And that's an important factor. And so over the years, I found that I've moved up in spaces because I've been vocal about those things. And again, vocal not in a way to dismantle a business, but vocal in the way in which to grow it. So I've been very positive about growing the spaces that I've been in. I've also been very positive in sort of mentoring the younger people in the organization. And part of my journey started off in various committees and structures. So I started off, for example, in smaller committees, and then built up into the remuneration committees, and ultimately started my journey into leadership. I think importantly, I've been very focused on learning from others. So regardless of who the individual is, I feel that everybody has something to add to my journey. And so I've been very focused on learning from whether someone is younger, older, whatever it may be, learning from them, understanding how that is going to progress me as a leader, taking that away. And again, I've also focused a lot on current leaders. So I do a lot, I kind of take a lot away from the Warren Buffetts of the world, living my truth. Those are things that have meaning for me. And I've tried to implement those things in my own career journey and my own leadership skills.
Awesome. Let's look at this business environment in South Africa right now. Many complain that maybe our process is looking at maybe countries like Rwanda and some countries in Asia compared in the global environment that we are in. Some of our processes are not as quick maybe as they should, and it sort of hinders the growth of business. What is your thinking in this space? Does South Africa present a good investment case or territory?
I think South Africa has always presented a great investment case. I think, of course, we've just come out of an election year, so we're going to see a lot of movement out, especially with the GNU and so on. So I think we'll see a lot of movement in that investment space. I think importantly, South Africa is probably a little bit too harsh on itself. We take a very hard line on ourselves, and I think that is just the country that we are. But we most definitely are a country that is worth every penny that you put into us. I think there's a lot of talk about that we may be over-regulated and the rest of it, but I think you've got to look at that in context. So regulation is something that we need as a country. We've seen that with a lot of economies that have failed, a lot of things that have happened in various structures, not just in Africa. There's failures throughout the world that you see. And I think that regulation is a necessary requirement of doing business in any country. So those who say that we have over-regulation, there's often the opposite side of the coin, which is, well, we don't have enough regulation, and that's why we see so much of failure. I think if you want to do business in South Africa, there's clear direction as to what you need to have in place in order to do that business. And once you start here, there's the world is, or at least South Africa is your oyster, right? So for me, I think that we don't have a hindrance to business. What we have is a lot of difficulty just from the political landscape, and I think that's now changing. So hopefully we'll see a lot more traction.
Yes. And the future of women in leadership?
The future of women in leadership, I think if you look at ourselves, how far we've come, as long as we continue to be intentional about that growth, I think that women are definitely you'll see that. I spoke earlier in a panel and I said, there's going to be a time where we don't talk about diversity as a business case, but we talk about diversity as something that is necessary for the growth of big business. And I think once you have that mindset, women in business, women in leadership, women in South Africa, there's actually no glass ceiling that can sort of keep us in. So you'll find that those glass ceilings more and more are being shattered.
One key advice your parents have given you that's helped you in business, in corporate?
The one key advice that my parents have given me is to remain true to who I am. Don't forget where I come from, and importantly, not try to assimilate to be someone that I'm not. So, I take where I come from very seriously. It's a reminder of what I need to give back, and I'm also very free in sharing where that is from. So my parents have been very firm about not being, not thinking that my upbringing was something different or any of those things, but to rather celebrate it.
And what are you most excited about?
What I'm most excited about? I'm most excited about family always, but if you're talking about what am I most excited about from a business perspective, I'm most excited about what South Africa has to hold post this election. I think we're going to surprise ourselves, very much as our famous swimmers and athletics have done. They keep continuing to surprise us.
Huh?
Yes.
No,
so if you can have the fourth fastest man in the world in your country, what is the rest of us?
Thank you so much for your time.
You too. Cheers.
There you have it from the Women in Leadership Summit here in Sandton, an event that was held to encourage women in leadership in the mining sector and the different sectors of business in the corporate world. Thank you from the Boardroom. It's goodbye.